In this episode, I get to chat to friend and world record holder Graham Owen. Graham is totally blind and holds the world record for the world's deepest blind dive. If this wasn't remarkable enough, Graham also likes to dive solo, and he's often found guiding people around the deep tunnels of Dorothea. Like many others, Graham has phobias. He has a phobia of the dark, of heights, and he has a phobia of drowning, which is incredible considering he holds the world record at 140 meters. This is a chat that I was personally looking forward to, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. This episode is dedicated to his best friend and dive buddy, Albie Roberts. Hi Graham, how you doing? How's your day?
It's good, thanks. The weather isn't too good here in Yorkshire. It's a bit miserable. Yorkshire's God's own country. Absolutely. It's the most beautiful place in the world. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, to be honest. Well, I think we're all very lucky. Living in Britain, we live in one of the most exceptional places in the world. And that's besides the fact that we have more shipwrecks than anybody else.
And you are a shipwreck person, aren't you? You love your wrecks.
Yeah, well, for me, that's what diving's about. I didn't realise it when I first got into diving, just how much wreck diving would be my thing. I don't think anybody really realises what direction the diving's going to go in when they first start. For me, it was just the fascination of going underwater, something I'd always wanted to do. So, but wreck diving, yeah, that's where my passion is, to be honest.
I think you're right. I don't think anybody knows what direction their divings are going to go when they first start, do they? So, you know, mine was about the wildlife, and it still is about the wildlife. But then I went into teaching.
Yeah, for me, I assisted a couple of tech instructors. I did some basic instruction in the club that I'm in. You know, I did my instructor foundation course with BZAC and did some basic instruction. But I loved the teaching side of it with the tech instructors. The thing is, I very quickly understood that if you're going to be involved in instruction, the amount of diving you're going to personally do is more limited. So being quite selfish about it, my passion is diving shipwrecks. Unless you're very lucky and you have an awful lot of free time, you're not going to be able to do both.
Obviously, I think you're like an adventurer, an explorer, you're a record holder. I mean, we'll get onto all of that. How did it start for you? Where did it start? Were you blind when you took up diving? Did you take up diving before you went blind?
So my journey into diving started quite young. I used to sit on my granddad's knee and we used to watch Jacques Cousteau. Loved the underwater stuff. And I always dreamed about being a deep sea diver. I had a bit of an opportunity when I was about 18 to have a go. There were some chaps that used to go in my local pub and they were members of a dive club. They invited me along, but I had other things happening in my life at the time. I was an apprentice. I was well into motorcycles at the time, have been all my life. One of my biggest passions, sports bikes. And then moving on through my life, I had lots of different hobbies. About 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with a potentially deteriorating sight condition. I very quickly lost enough of my vision for me to feel that I was no longer safe to ride or drive. I couldn't do my other hobbies. They were all sight-based. So I decided to try a few other things. I had to go skiing, which I really enjoyed. And I went for a tri-dive. I'd not dived before, so I went for a tri-dive. I really loved it.
Were you totally blind at this point?
At that point, I still had some peripheral vision left. I was actually registered blind, but I had enough sight to be able to get through the basic training, to start my journey, really. So I was very lucky. I learned with a local club. To be totally honest, I was treated completely differently to other people. It did make things difficult. I was told when I first started diving by the chairman of the club at the time that I may qualify as an ocean diver, but that would be as far as I would go.
Little did he know.
Well, I'm one of those people that if you tell me no, I'll try and find a way to make that a yes. So I was doing the dive leader course, basically, to qualify as an ocean diver. They made me do 80 plus dives before they'd sign me off. And they only signed me off because there was an Egypt trip booked. And they wanted me to go on it to make up the numbers. But if I was to go, I would restrict their diving as somebody who was unqualified, and they wanted to be able to dive to 30 meters. So, well, that all happened very early in my diving. I started diving with a different club at the same time, and I did actually join the other club. They were all for encouraging people to try and explore their own boundaries and to learn and to develop. So we had divers in that club who they very quickly got me onto a twin set. They'd also, some of them had got nitrox and advanced nitrox, so I did those courses. I was doing some 60-meter air wreck diving at the time. I've been diving for probably 8-9 months at this point. I know it all seems very quick, but I was doing a lot of diving.
Things like a rapid rise through from sort of ocean diver to 60 meters air diving.
Well, it was, but I was diving a lot. I was doing quite a bit of midweek diving. I was diving every weekend. Until recently, I was still diving every single weekend of the year, if not the full weekend or the full week. Circumstances have changed now, so that's not possible, but I'm still doing as much as I can. I figured that 60-meter air diving really wasn't for me. I did a deco procedures course, and then I did an ormoxic trimix course fairly quickly. A few months later, not that much, I moved on to a rebreather, as I felt that that was the way forward with the diving I wanted to do to give me the tools I needed. The equipment we use, the gases we breathe, the training we have, they're all just tools really to get us to the place that we want to be. That's how I see it. You know, I dive a rebreather purely as a tool to get me to the wrecks I want to get to and to dive as safely as I possibly can.
It all sounds like you found it relatively easy, even though you're blind. I mean, there must have been some challenges along the way, not just for you, but for the people around you.
Yeah, massive challenges. We all have our own little preconceptions of what others can and can't do, and I'm sure that's what people have about me. And sometimes they're the biggest hurdles. It's not so much what difficulties you have in doing something, it's the barriers that other people put in the way. You know, I've been on dive boats where whoever's organized the trip hasn't realized that I'm a blind diver, and then they've been uncomfortable about letting me jump in the water. The skippers sometimes have been a little bit awkward. Mostly, though, I'm very lucky. Mostly, I've actually been encouraged by the people that I've gone with.
Absolutely.
Even people I've never met before.
I've been fortunate enough to spend a couple of hours or more speaking to you already about certain things, and I know for a fact there isn't nothing that's going to stop you from doing anything. No isn't in your vocabulary, really, is it?
There are things, I believe personally, that there gets a point in your life where you have to challenge yourself. So I have some inherent fears and phobias. Due to life experience, I have a real fear of the dark, a fear of heights, and I certainly have a fear of drowning. I dive, I cave and pothole, and that's a way for me to actually challenge myself with those fears. You know, when you're potholing and you're hanging from a rope on a pitch that's several hundred feet, you've got to go down that, and maybe on a hanging rebelay, that's where you're just hanging from a bolt in a wall, switch ropes onto another rope, and then continue down. It's a scary thing. And then you've got to go back up it. It's scary. It puts my heart in my mouth, but it's something that I enjoy challenging myself with. And it's the same with diving. Every dive is a challenge. I don't take any dive as being an easy dive. It doesn't matter whether it's 3 meters or 103 meters. It's still dangerous, scary, certainly for me. You know, but I'm the world's biggest coward.
Well, I know for a fact that you're not a coward from some of the things you've done. But talking about being a little bit scary, there is something that I know about that gives you a little bit of confidence when you're diving, is wearing a mask and wearing a prescription mask when you're diving.
Yeah, so I've had the same mask ever since I lost what was left of my useful sight, and it had a particular prescription lens in it, specially done by a low vision clinic here in Leeds. Unfortunately, about 2 months ago, I had a little bit of an incident at the bottom of the North Sea on a wreck. It culminated in me not only losing my helmet with my video lights, which are quite important, but also a mask. So that has been one consistent thing throughout my diving, and it's quite strange. And I know it'll sound really weird to other people. Why should a mask matter to a blind guy? That has been the one consistent thing. That's been my lucky charm. It's something I've protected throughout all my diving. It's traveled around the world with me everywhere I've been. It's been to some scary places with me. Other kits changed. You know, different bits and pieces come and go, but my mask has been the one thing that I've had all that time. So when I lost it, it really shook my confidence. Since then, been getting out as much as I can, still doing 60-meter recs, still going, down on occasions into Dorothea. Yeah. Although any sea dive far outweighs a quarry dive. No matter how much I love Dorothea as an inland training site, that's what it is. It's an inland training site for diving shipwrecks.
You do like it at Dorothea, don't you? And it is a place that you know very well.
Well, there were times in my diving that I would have said it was my favourite place. No, it's not. Being in the sea on a wreck is my favourite place. Dorothea, as an inland training site, I think it takes a lot of beating. I know the place far too well, which says a lot about how many times I've dived there. It serves a purpose to me now. That's what it is. It just serves a purpose. Just as Cape and Ray and Stony Cove and Endak do to other people.
To be fair, though, I mean, we're talking a different level here as well, where you've gone rapidly through Ocean Diver up to Rebreather, and we're talking about doing deep dives. But at Dorothea, you don't just dive it, you train people there.
Well, I don't actually train people anymore. That's years ago. But what I do, if I know people and they ask me, would I act as a guide in Dorothea to take them to the sump or to some of the tunnels that they don't know where they are, I'm happy to do that. As long as I've dived with them and I know that they feel they can trust me and I feel I can trust them. Because as we all know, in all our diving, being able to trust the people that are around you is really, really important. So when you dive as a buddy pair, I mostly dive solo these days, but when you dive as a buddy pair, you have to be able to trust your buddy. When you're diving, I'm not sure whether the depth really matters, but we always consider that when you're diving deeper and you're diving longer, then being able to trust the people you're around is really, really important. It is. Because not only can you be detrimental to their diving and to their life, but they can be detrimental to yours too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I couldn't agree with you more. That kind of leads on nicely to your world record attempt. Well, not attempt, you did it. So just talk us through the planning for that, because again, like you just said, you must have had a very good team around you that you trusted, and they trusted you. And just tell us how it kind of came about. That was 2016, wasn't it?
Well, I did the first one back in about 2007, I think, which was in Dorothea. So the tunnel at the bottom of Dorothea is actually 106 meters. On a saltwater calibrated computer, it reads at about 104.5. So the first time I did it, it was 104.5. Did it a few years later. This is all to raise money for guide dogs, as I have a guide dog. A few years later, I did something that we called at the time the 5 Tunnels Challenge, which included the bottom and the tunnel at the bottom. And I used freshwater calibrated computers. So we got a slightly more accurate reading at 106 meters. I never got a chance to do a saltwater record, to be honest, until, back in probably 2016. It was while on the first commercial week on Legends, Simon Taylor Watson's boat. So myself and Albie Roberts, a really good friend of mine, he's actually been my if I've got a dive buddy, he's been my dive buddy for the past 10 years. Probably one of the best divers, if not the best diver I've ever met. Sadly, he passed away just a few weeks ago. So we were out there on Simon's boat. I mentioned to Simon if it was possible to do something past 104, 105 meters, then it would be a new world record. So the final couple of days, we did a couple of dives on the Gulf Fleet 31, which at that time, if you went underneath the keel in what they call the crack, it was 106 meters. The first day's attempt, Albie and I missed the wreck completely. We got to 105 meters, but we didn't find the wreck. And then the second day, we dived the Gulf Fleet, fortunately, because that was the aim. It is a wreck after all. Yeah, so that was my first attempt at doing a saltwater record.
The crack, if anyone doesn't know, that is the tectonic plates, isn't it?
Yeah, that's actually one. The Gulf Fleet lies at one end of that reef. At the other end, there is what is better known as the crack. Underneath the Gulf Fleet, there is now just a dip. It's less of a prominent crack, apparently. It's filling with sand every year. So it's a lot shallower than it was when I dived it in 2016. At the other end of that reef, there is a more prominent crack, and the crack is the separation between the African and Asian tectonic plates. I think you go down to the seabed, go down the reef to the seabed, 102 meters, 103 meters. Go across the seabed quite a distance, and you come to what appears to be a big wall in front of you, apparently, and it's literally a vertical cliff. Well, that's actually where one of the tectonic plates has lifted slightly as they've separated.
Yeah.
Just before you get to it, there's a gap in front of you, and if you drop into that, we dropped into it and we went along it. You're dropping below the seabed. We went down to 111, 112 meters. So we were knocking on 10 meters below the seabed. We could have gone further, but that was our planned depth. And you can actually put your hands out and touch the face of the two tectonic plates while below the seabed, which is quite an amazing feeling.
So there wasn't too much pre-planning. That was just something that you came up with while you were there and thought, let's give it a bash.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Most people on the boat were going to do the dive. So we all did our basic dive planning the day before. Not so much done as a team effort as done in pairs, although the majority went down at the same time. The majority left the wreck at the same time. I think Albie and I were a bit behind everybody else when we left the wreck.
Oh, well, that's great. So no safety team involved then?
Other than the fact that you've got an awful lot of divers there carrying an awful lot of gas, we didn't really need a safety team, to be honest.
What, because of experience and because of diving together for so long?
Yeah, I think so.
How did you communicate? So I remember you saying earlier about the importance of your helmet and the video lights. Is that, from what we've spoken about, that's a way that you communicate, isn't it?
So I, over the years, my ability to perceive light has decreased. So the lights I use are brighter and brighter. As most people that dive in the UK waters, and certainly in the North Sea or the Irish Sea will know, once you go past about 30 meters, it's pretty dark. Well, when you shine lights in front of you, unless the light actually hits something and starts reflecting back, it stays dark. Well, I have only a bit of light perception, which means I can perceive fairly bright lights around me. Other than that, there's nothing. If I shine very, very bright lights in front of me, it stays dark until that light reflects back and there's something there. That's how I navigate my way around. So I shine as much light in front of me as I can. When it starts to get brighter, when I start to perceive that light, I know there's something there in front of me. Then I use what are effectively my eyes, my fingers, to find out what that is. Hopefully not a fishing net, hopefully I haven't gone inside a wreck without knowing it. I don't mind doing wreck penetration as long as I know I'm going inside. When it comes to communication, I do actually have, always wear a torch on the back of my hand, an umbilical torch, and I use that for light signals. So if you do a really big circle, I can make out the fact that there's a light waving about. Hopefully it's going in something of a circular motion. If somebody just flashes a light at my face, I'll assume that they've got an issue and I'll try and help them.
So what about a computer? Obviously you can't see a computer, but it can vibrate and it can give you messages, can't it?
The rebreather I dive, the Inspiration, actually has a buzzer. So if I get a warning on my rebreather, the buzzer goes off. Hopefully I hear it, as a lot of inspo divers will understand. Unless your ear is right next to your buzzer, you don't hear it underwater, even when everybody else does. I try and pay attention to the buzzer on my unit. I know it makes different buzzing for different alarms. I can't remember what's what, so I have to make a guess at what the alarm might be. Other than that, it's all a guesswork experience and having the confidence to think you're doing it right, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you're a bit of a solo diver as well, so when you get down to these depths and you're doing the 60, 70 meters, you like to actually go off and explore on your own, don't you?
There's no point in being there unless you're going to go for an explorer, is there?
No, but doing it alone. So when your buzzers and things are going off and you're on your own, you must have had some close calls.
I've had a few, but then if you do a lot of diving, I guess, everybody will have what they consider to be close calls.
Yeah.
I've had my share. I do everything I can to make sure that things go right. That's all we can do. So I make sure that my kit's in good condition. I make sure that I maintain it well. I build my rebreather to a system. I test it properly. I try and do everything right. to minimize the possibility of there being any issues. But it doesn't mean there never will be.
Every diver should do that, even if you're going to 10 meters.
Yeah, I totally agree. It doesn't matter what the depth is. It's a dangerous place underwater. Without gas, a meter's a long way to go.
It is, yeah, absolutely. So, so you've made that record attempt in 2016, and you got down to 105 meters. How did you know then that you got to 105 meters? Did you get a tap on the shoulder, or? I
find the blue water diving is really, really hard. So, because I only have a little bit of light perception, what I do is I put a strobe on the back of whoever I'm going to dive with. Yeah. Given the fact that we were diving a reef, and I try to follow the flashing light. As long as it's bright enough for me to be able to make it out, I'll just keep following it. We got down to 105 meters. I didn't know that until we came out, to be totally honest.
Oh, okay.
Although with a rebreather, you can actually communicate a little anyway. So at depth, especially with helium, your voice goes a bit squeakier, which makes it a little easier to understand when you try to talk to each other. So you're breathing and talking into an open air space, not out into the water. So you're not making any bubbles. So you can communicate a little bit.
Oh, cool. That's pretty cool, that is.
The second day on the Gulf Fleet, I was more aware of the depth we were at because I knew I was on the Gulf Fleet. And when I went underneath it, I knew I would be probably past 105 meters, but that didn't really matter.
Well, that's still quite amazing. Like, I think I've said to you before, I don't know if you're inspirational or crazy. I think there's a fine line there somewhere.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing, that suits me better.
Yeah, yeah, I'd rather be known as crazy, I think. But talking of that, so yeah, that was 111 meters. So that was 2017. That was when you decided that breaking that world record of 105 meters wasn't enough, and you broke your own world record and went to 111.
Well, it just seemed like a good idea at the time. What can I say? We were there, the opportunity was there, so why not have a go? Yeah.
And was it the same thing again? It was like you just said, we're there, let's have a go. No pre-planning, just drop down. Let's give it a go, see what happens.
Well, there's pre-planning for all my dives. There's pre-planning in the sense that we talked about it during the week. Simon certainly gave it an awful lot of thought. We sat down, we discussed our gases, we discussed the what ifs. Simon certainly has an awful lot of experience. He dived the crack many times, so it seemed advisable after the previous year when Albie failed to find the Gulf Fleet on the first one, that perhaps I should take somebody with me that knew where it was. We knew what our run times would be. We knew through Simon's experience how long it would take us to get there, roughly what sort of bottom time we would be doing before we set off back. Yeah, there was a bit of planning involved, but that planning perhaps isn't what people think. You know, sitting down around a computer and doing gas calcs for hours, that really isn't needed. We knew what we were carrying. We knew what our limitations were. You know, we were all happy with what we were doing.
I think that's probably right. I think my perception of the planning needed would probably take months rather than hours or a few days. But if you know what you're doing and you've got the experience and you've done it before and you're with people highly experienced in that area and knowledgeable, then I guess it doesn't require that much.
Well, we were doing build-up dives all week. Come the end of the week, really, it was down to a basic decision. Simon and myself. Albie came along with us, and I can't say that didn't give me confidence, because it did, because, you know, Albie and I did a lot of diving together, and I truly miss the better half of our diving.
I bet you do.
Team. But it came down to the day, and on the day, all the planning that we needed to do had been done. All our gases were mixed, our kit was prepared. If Simon had said, I don't feel it's right today, we wouldn't have done it. If I'd have said, I don't feel right for it today, we wouldn't have done it. No. That is always the final decision. At any time, if it doesn't feel right, in the club that I'm in now, we have a little mantra. Now and again, it is a case that peer pressure forces you to do things that you really don't feel comfortable with. I actually think diving's something that you have to feel comfortable with when you're doing it. I certainly don't feel fear. I feel nervous. I think that's the best way. Maybe. Well, I feel nervous every time I dive. And if I didn't feel nervous, then I think diving would be the wrong thing for me. Yeah. If it's more than nerves, then don't be pressed into doing something. Our saying in our club is, if it doesn't feel right, then it's not right. And that doesn't matter whether you think there's something wrong with your kit, are not happy with the dive you're going to do, and you feel a bit too nervous about it, or even if it's just down to, I really don't fancy this today, that's a good enough reason not to do it. Because
completely agree. I mean, when I train, when I'm teaching, I go on about peer pressure, and I say the same thing. If you don't feel it, don't do it.
Yeah,
I
think that's really important.
Fun. It's meant to be fun, isn't it? So
it is, yeah. And no matter what level you're diving at, if you're not enjoying it, don't do it. And if it's more than nerves, then don't be pushed into doing something just because you think you're going to let people down, you're going to disappoint, people aren't going to be willing to do it with you again.
Yeah, and I think that ties in nicely with like your experience level and your training level. Just don't go beyond that. If you feel uncomfortable, don't do it.
Yeah, that's it. If you feel uncomfortable, don't do it. So in 2018, I went out on Legends again. So we did it again. Not the crack that time. It was Shark Reef, Alex and myself. And then in 2019, I went out to Egypt on Legends again, and Alex and I pushed it a little bit deeper.
I was going to say, so you weren't satisfied with breaking your own world record. You did it again twice in 2018 and 19, like you said. So you went to 2018, you went to 117 meters, and then last year you went to 140 meters.
Yeah, the 140 meter one didn't go quite as we would have liked, or I would have liked. It was a bit more uncomfortable, was that dive, than I would have really liked. But that's due to errors I made myself. So 2018, I was quite nervous doing that dive. I remember, as we were doing it on Shark Reef, and Alex had discussed with me the possibility of down currents. Can't deny the thought of hitting a down current when you pass 100 meters.
Yeah,
that's a deep reef, is that, and you're not going to be happy if you drag down to the bottom. Alex did say that the only way out of a down current was to hit what we call the up button, the inflator on your wing. That idea didn't really suit me either, to be honest.
That's a no-win situation, that one.
Yeah, so I was a little bit nervous when we did that, if I'm totally honest. And then in 2019, obviously we discussed the same issue, but I made a little error in judgment. So I allowed somebody to talk me into going to Egypt with a wetsuit. When I go abroad, I dive in a dry suit. I dive in a dry suit here all the time. I keep my kit the same. Because I dive in a dry suit and I use my dry suit for my buoyancy, the only time I use my wing is on the surface when I'm waiting for the boat to come and pick me up. Perhaps I didn't level off. I've got a banded wing, an OMS banded wing.
Yeah.
And I did. It wasn't quite evenly balanced, and I didn't realise that until we got out to Egypt. Diving a wetsuit, I had to use my wing for buoyancy. So I made minor adjustments on it in the first couple of days. Probably not as well as but I thought I was happy with it. Unfortunately, the situation became a bit exacerbated by the fact that Alex and I dropped in to do what was going to be 150 meters. That was our target depth. All the other guys, most of them, they all had different set depths that they were going to go to, because the reef there, I think, stops at about 25, 30 meters, the main part of the reef, and then it's a vertical wall. It's still got lots and lots of coral all the way down. It's pretty much a slight incline to the wall, so you're dropping underneath it as you go down. All the guys had different set depths that they were going to go to. Potentially, they would be there as backup if we needed them as well. So as we went down, done all my kit checks, not only the previous day, but that morning, everything was good to go. But unfortunately, the counterlungs I have on my rebreather, which are back mounted, they're not the AP counterlungs. They're manufactured by somebody else, and they have little clips at the bottom that clip the counterlungs down your back. They also have Velcro that holds them in. One of these clips, once we got to about 130 meters, about 120 meters, one of these clips must have decided that it didn't like the pressure, popped off. So at 130 meters, as I'm going down horizontally, it peeled out from behind my back and popped above my head. So I knew that there was an issue because my ADV seemed to be firing a lot. That's your automatic diluent valve. So it was injecting a lot of gas, but you expect it to inject as you go down, and the counterlung's compressed. Something didn't seem quite right. Alex had obviously seen this happen because we were going down pretty much face to face, so that he could keep tapping my hand and giving me signals as to what depth we were at. We got to 130 meters. We stopped. Alex signaled and said to me, 130 meters, you okay? But I seem to be almost breathing open circuit here. We decided we would continue down a little bit further. We got to 140 meters. Alex tapped me, 140 meters. We're going up. And I thought, that's a good idea. Let's go up. We're not going to do 150 meters today.
You knew something was wrong.
I did, yeah. I knew something wasn't quite right. Breathing was getting a little bit tougher too. So we started to ascend. Nice steady ascent. We got to about 100 meters, and Alex tapped me and said, stay here. So I kept my hand against the wall so that I knew where I was. And he went above me. He was obviously trying to sort something out, and I wasn't sure what it was. He passed me a clip. He pulled a clip down the front of me, passed me a clip. So I felt that clip, and it felt identical to the clip that holds my harness. I dive an inspiration with an IQ backpack, the OMS IQ. So I thought, oh no, that's what the problem is. My harness has become unclipped at one side. So I felt round for my harness strap, and on discovering that it still seemed fastened, I inadvertently squeezed the clip and undid the harness strap. What an idiot. So I've now made the situation a little bit worse. Fortunately for me, Alex was switched on. So I let go of the first clip he gave me, and I said, can you clip that back for me? Because I'm now sideways on, because the counterlung, which is my inhale counterlung, is pulling me up sideways, and I've undone the same clip. Yeah, we got the clips done, managed to get the counterlung clip back down, unfortunately down the front of me, which meant it pulled me on my side. So it was a very uncomfortable few hours of deco, but it was an experience, you know, and it certainly didn't put me off.
I can't even imagine what it's like to do that, being able to see, but being in your position, I can't. I mean, going that deep never has excited me because I'm about the wildlife and stuff like that, and, you know, going deep. So to go that deep and be able to see would be worrying enough. Maybe it was an advantage that you couldn't see.
Yeah, possibly. People say that to me. I do try and keep it in my head that what you can't see can't hurt you.
True. So obviously that was 140 meters. So you're still the current record holder at 140 meters, which is really impressive. Anyway,
hopefully there will be somebody that will come along, whether or not how they've got to their sight loss. It's always a personal journey, isn't it? Absolutely. But hopefully somebody will come along in diving and see that as a challenge, go and beat it. And hopefully when they do beat it, they'll do it for charity and they'll raise some money for their charity, because that's the only reason why I do the ridiculous things, really.
So yeah, you do all of these things for charity, and it's to raise money for guide dogs, isn't it? Because you've got your own guide dog, Gypsy.
Yep. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have Gypsy. I used to have a guide dog called Gunner. I had for 7.5 years, and now I have Gypsy. Gypsy's actually coming up to retirement next year too.
I'm going to put a link on to a donate button to the guide dog, so hopefully we'll get people that will donate for that, because they're not cheap, are they? Gypsy wasn't cheap, and I know new dogs coming through are really, really expensive.
Well, guide dogs, they breed all their own dogs from their own breeding stock. Guide dog puppies are trained for 2 years before they're matched with an owner, and the average cost of a working guide dog through its life right now is just over £57,000. It's a lot of money. Without the goodwill of all the people that donate to guide dogs, I wouldn't have the life I have. I'm very, very lucky. There's lots of people out there that don't have a guide dog that really desperately need one to make a difference to their lives. I'm lucky I'm on my second guide dog. When Gypsy retires, hopefully I'll be matched with another dog. And if lockdown continues, hopefully I'll be able to keep Gypsy.
Excellent. Well, like I say, we'll put a donate button on, and if anyone, even £1 makes a huge difference, doesn't it? Anybody who can spare a little bit of money just to help and get more guide dogs is a good thing. It
is. Every penny that people donate is a penny guide dogs didn't have. if people feel they can, for one, I would be very, very grateful.
No worries. Well, we'll do that. So, do you have any plans to go any deeper then? Are you going to hit that 150, 160? Are you going to push it a little bit further? What's coming up?
Well, lockdown changed a lot of things for everybody, didn't it? And it did for me too. I would have liked to have done my annual visit to Alex and Simon on Legends. Hopefully next year. I keep in touch with them. They're very supportive and amazing people. They really are. If I go out next year, I feel up to it. Who knows? It's one of those things that I play by ear each time I go. If Alex's game, the situation seems right, we might just have a go at something a little bit deeper.
You've not set any limits?
If you'd have asked me that a few years ago, I'd have said, I don't have any limits. Now I do. I think I don't know if it's age, experience. Well, I don't know what it is, but I actually do feel my mortality a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I realise that I'm maybe not quite as indestructible as I thought I was. I'm not looking. I'm also not really looking to push the record out of the reach of anybody else. I know there are people that would say, well, that's pretty deep already. But I actually think it's good to set a challenge for people that they have to work at. So somebody will come along, some other blind person that's a diver will come along and see that as a challenge. I would like to be the first one to shake the hand when they beat it. It'll be something worth achieving. That's what I'd like to do, is set them a challenge that is worth achieving.
Well, you know what's involved, so yeah, it is an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't really see it that way for me, to be honest, because it's just another dive. And I guess by the time they reach the confidence, skills and abilities to be able to do it, they'll probably see it the same way.
I've just got a couple of other questions for you. So just simple ones, really. Favourite UK dive site? Is it Dorothea?
Favourite UK dive site? I think it would have to be the Pentland Firth. That's the area of water between mainland Scotland and the Orkneys, isn't it? Yeah. Closely followed by, my bread and butter diving, which is the North Sea.
So the Pentland Firth, I mean, this just adds to the craziness. Isn't that some of the most treacherous, fastest flowing water in the world?
It can be tricky to dive at times. Yeah, it can be. But I think it makes it all the more worthwhile because you can dive wrecks that have never been dived. I've been lucky to do that. There are people that spend an awful lot of time researching different shipwrecks up there.
And I think you like finding new wrecks, don't you? You have been lucky enough to be the first to find some wrecks and maybe have a bit of memorabilia from those dives.
I've been on a few of those trips. Never organised them, but I've been on a few of those trips. I've been lucky enough to find the odd artifact in the diving world we call it spidge. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a collection, but I do have strong personal beliefs about the things that you bring back. It is really important that you report everything you find to the receiver of wreck. And B, I personally like to make sure that what I find is cleaned up.
Yeah.
So in some cases restored, but most importantly, it's labelled. So the way I do it is I have little plaques made, little brass plaques engraved with the details of the wreck, the date I found it.
Yeah.
So that when I'm no longer here, that artifact, it retains its most important and precious thing, and that is its provenance as to where it came from.
Yeah.
The true value of anything is its history.
Right. You didn't get these items to bring up and sell and make money out of, did you? You just brought them up for that reason, for history, and maybe if a museum wanted one of those pieces, you'd lend it to them, but you wouldn't give it to them.
There was an exhibition several years ago about a particular ship in a museum. The bell for that wreck had been found, along with some other bits and pieces, and they were lent to the museum. This wasn't by me, but they were lent to the museum under the pretext that once the exhibition was over, they wouldn't be put in a dusty cupboard for the next 100 years until they decided to do another exhibition, and they would be sent back to the owner that actually found those artifacts and had been given ownership by the receiver of rec. I totally agree with that. I would happily allow anybody to display, any museum to display any of the artifacts I've got, providing they sent them back to me, because otherwise they'll just be put in a box, put in a cupboard, and they'll never be seen again. At least they will be seen.
Yeah, and enjoyed.
By my friends and enjoyed, yeah. And I would never dream of selling artifacts. I have given a few away. Once I've received ownership, I have given a few away. But I would not sell them because I only see myself as custodian.
Spidge.
Yeah, spidge.
Yeah, spidge. So for those that have not heard of this term, what is spidge? You mentioned it earlier on in the episode when you take stuff from a wreck.
Please don't ask me to give the history of the term spidge, because I haven't got a clue. As far as I'm aware, the term spidge is the generic term used by divers for anything that we bring back from wrecks. Anything you bring back from a wreck is classed as spidge. I don't know where the term came from. I heard it many, many years ago and didn't understand what people were talking about when I was on a boat diving out of the northeast. The guys were talking about spidge, and then obviously I couldn't see what they were talking about either. And then over time, I learned to use the term myself. Yeah. So it's just a generic term.
We don't know what that could possibly mean.
No, I actually, in my best guess, and it's pure and simply a guess, is it could come from, and I kind of like this myself. I like this idea that it could come from the days when perhaps diving wasn't such a popular sport, and you can just imagine a set of, I hesitate to say, bearded Bezak divers, a set of divers sat around a table in a pub, not wanting people to know what it is they're talking about, and instead of saying, "Oh, did you see the porthole that I got?" they say, "Ooh, did you see that spidge that I got?"
Just a lot of word.
Yeah, in my head, I'm romanticizing it, but I think that could be where it comes from. I've absolutely no idea, though.
I like that. I'm going to go with that idea. I like it. Your favourite dive site abroad, is it the Red Sea?
I know it doesn't really count as abroad, or maybe it does, but I like diving off Malin Head. Yeah. I like the Red Sea. I certainly like diving off Legends. It's an amazing boat, and it's really, really well run. And the diving that it allows you to do, that's something different for the Red Sea. I like going to Malta. I've been to the Philippines. I really enjoyed some of the wreck diving I did in the Philippines. That was good. But Norway, I love diving in Norway. There are places around the world that I'd still like to go and dive. I was hoping a couple of years ago, Albie and I were looking at maybe trying to get to the Great Lakes. Truk Lagoon, that would be somewhere on the wish list, but it wouldn't be that high up.
Which one is your bucket list then?
The top of my bucket list would probably be a wreck that a lot of people haven't heard of, and I almost got a chance to dive it with another group of guys a couple of years ago. That's the Transylvania. That's off Malin Head. Other than that, I don't know. I just love diving.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously, you've got all this gear. So you've got a rebreather, you've got your prescription mask now, you've got your, you've got your wings, and you've got all your video lights, and you've got all this. I remember reading a story about, I think it was the one in 2017, that you'd got down to the 111 meters and something went pop. This is because you didn't have something quite so technical, I believe.
Yeah. Well, the video lights that I use, they're imported from China, so they're not the most expensive things in the world. I tend to, my light systems, I tend to buy multiples. So I use 2 lights on my helmet, but when I purchase them, I'll usually buy 4 or 6 because I realise they're going to be of limited life with the sort of diving that I do. But back in 2016-17, I was using some slightly smaller Chinese-made torches, and on that particular dive, I was carrying one in my pocket. Simon's leading the way down the crack, We're gradually descending. Albie's behind me somewhere. Simon had turned round and he got hold of my hand and shook my hand. 211 meters, he said. Let's turn and go. Okay, we'll turn and go. And as he went past me, there was this boom, which was quite loud.
Yeah.
And the first thing you tend to think of is, I really hope whatever it wasn't mine. Now, I know that sounds very selfish, but when it comes to self-preservation, you honestly, anybody that thought, oh, well, if that's going to be something life-threatening, I hope it happened to me, I'm afraid they're an idiot. So I did think, I really hope whatever that was, it wasn't mine. So I asked Albie, are you okay? Was that you? And he replied back, no, I'm fine. And Simon's still mooching off into the distance because he's the one with the strobe. The light's disappearing. So off we went. Simon seemed quite happy. I've tapped everything I could to see if it still felt like it was in one piece. My unit was still working fine. It was still injecting oxygen, so I've still got oxygen. Who knows what that little bang was, but it certainly sounded like a cylinder. And it had slipped my mind. What could that possibly have been? I'd forgotten about it. Then I put my hand in my dry suit pocket and took out the torch I took with me for signalling, the front of which was actually right down in the bottom of the torch because it had imploded. But at least I knew that those little cheap Chinese torches were good to 110 meters.
Yeah, exactly. So how much did that torch cost you?
Well, when I first bought them with chargers and rechargeable batteries, they were 20 quid each. But I think that was a replacement that cost me 8 quid.
So what's next for you then, Graham? Are you, obviously we said that you may, if the opportunity arises, go and do a deeper dive and try and break that record if it's possible. But anything else planned? I know you do caving as well.
For the last couple of years, some of the cave divers in the club that I'm in have been promising to take me on a couple of cave dives. So I'd like to do that. I'm never going to be a cave diver, I'll be honest. I would like to, as I'm a caver and potholer, it seems a bit silly being a diver that I've never done a cave dive. So I'd like to do something relatively easy cave diving wise. Other than that, I think it's just the bread and butter stuff, really. I've got a couple of trips booked for next year. One, a Pentland first trip and a Malta trip with the White Rose Dolphins, which is quite rare. We don't do many trips in our club. I'm actually thinking about taking up pottery, actually.
Oh, really?
That was a bit ridiculous, but yeah, that's...
underwater pottery at 100 meters? Or?
Probably not. Although they do the underwater ironing thing, don't they?
Or wing walking. So you're going to wing walk and do your pottery or something. It's surely just sitting in a room at sea level in a room doing pottery doesn't sound like something you're going to do.
Well, it's something that I did have a go at about 20 years ago, just when I first started losing my sight. I had a go and I really enjoyed it, but I've just not managed to find time. Whereas now, things happen in your personal life, life changes. I'm not getting a chance to do as much diving as I would like to do or as I used to do. So I do have a bit more spare time. It's unlikely I'm going to take up skiing. There are lots and lots of other hobbies that I'd like to try. I had a go at water skiing. That was really good fun. I might have another go at that. I think diving for the foreseeable future hopefully will remain my primary thing. It is the thing I've got the biggest passion for, but we all have a bit of a sell-by date. And for me, the thing that really dictates me diving is the confidence I have with what I do. I'm never going to be happy to be somebody who dives on a tether, relying completely on somebody else. It's just not me. The loss of my mask did actually hit me quite badly. Hopefully, there's a gentleman that's sorting me out a replacement for that.
Dive site, Liam Ward. Top guy.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. He's come to my rescue. I can't thank him enough.
When that light perception goes completely, is that the end of the diving then?
Well, it's right at this minute in time, it would be a simple case of yes. But when that actually happens, because things tend to happen gradually, you don't notice it. So perhaps if it happens gradually, then it won't be the end of my diving.
Yeah, I hope not, because you know what you do is amazing. Really, I mean, you may not think it's that amazing, but I certainly do, and you know, it's just incredible. It's been an absolute pleasure again to chat with you, and I really hope at some point we can catch up. Like I say, I'm in Yorkshire quite a lot. Catch up and have a beer, and that would be just
Feel
awesome.
free. Yeah, that would be great. Just let me know when you're up here. We'll have a beer.